Facebook says it will restore Aussie news content removed from its site last week after doing a deal with the Morrison government. It comes after the government made last-minute changes to its digital media bargaining code to bring Facebook back to the negotiating table.
Facebook is now going to engage in good faith negotiations with the commercial players, and our message to Australian news media businesses is no doubt to sit at that table and hopefully conclude the deals.
Amy Remeikis is all up in Facebook's business and she joins us now. Amy, so clearly a compromise of some sort has been reached here. Who would you say gave more ground?
I'd say probably Facebook gave more ground, and I would say that was probably because they overplayed their cards in the first place by deciding to wipe anything to do with Australia from its site those few days ago. I mean, basically, they've got an agreement from the government that if the government decides that Facebook is going to be part of the code, they'll get 1 month's warning about that. But other than that, it's essentially if Facebook makes deals with media companies and can prove that it makes enough deals with media companies, then it won't be forced into the code, which is what it wanted.
Well, that's a lot of huff and puff from Facebook. So in the end, do you reckon that their decision to pull down news last week helped them or ultimately harmed them?
I think it ultimately harmed them, and it wasn't necessarily in Australia. Facebook is still wanting to make huge gains in areas like India, for instance, and one of the first phone calls that Scott Morrison made, or, conversations that he had was with the Indian Prime Minister. So Facebook was worried more about their global reputation. We know that London and the UK Prime Minister was quite upset about it, and everyone was kind of watching what was happening. So faced with the international furor, Facebook decided to come back to Australia and say, you know what, we will come to this table and we will have a look at what you're doing.
I know we've still got to see what the legislation looks like after it's changed, but you talk about the agreements that Facebook can make with media outlets. Is there a mechanism for the government to say, sorry, that's not a proper agreement, that's not good enough, you're not paying enough for that? Or will Facebook have the power to be able to say, sorry, that's it, take it or leave it?
If the government decides that Facebook needs to be part of this code and gives them that 1 month warning period that, yes, you're going to be part of the code, and then they still can't come to an agreement, then the last course of action there is for the government to step in as the independent adjudicator and say, we agree with this site. We think you need to pay X amount for your news, and that's not what Facebook wants.
All right, Amy, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
With so much content online, it's sometimes hard to keep up with it all. And let's face it, who has the time? The Project YouTube has you covered with the stories that matter. Hit subscribe for a daily list of the news that you need to know.